Illuvium Arena Update 1.16. So we saw the testnet patch of this a couple of days ago, but again, what was actually in this patch was not all on the testnet. So we're going to quickly skim over the stuff we've already talked about, but I want to specifically go over a few changes that were not a part of the testnet. The first and foremost, of course, the localization. Anytime there's additional languages being added to the game, absolute W. Never going to complain about this. But right here, right away, we're getting into it immediately. Let me zoom in a little bit on this right here. There's many times, those who've been watching my stream for the longest time know I've been very vocal about how I felt that the ranked system, the queues, were a little bit weird. Having ranked Arena, but then having ranked Leviathan too. It didn't make sense to me. My wish of getting ranked as Leviathan has come true. Right here, right now, we're merging Leviathan and ranked queues into a single ranked queue. Ranked queues will now incorporate Illuvial's ownership, boosting utility and encouraging rangers to train them further. It is now going to be about hopping into the overworld as well and having your own Illuvials so that you can use them in the arena. Like, yes, I do feel a little bit bad for like certain free-to-play players that maybe were just strictly arena fans, because now they're going to be kind of stuck to play in casual. However, if you do want to play ranked, you can at least get started in tier 0 and get your tier 0 collection to a good place and find a couple good tier 0s with good stats, because of course that's not going to get you far in the late game of the Illuvium Arena. But it can at least get you on a good kickstart, and then come time where you do want to hop into the overworld for like your first couple stage 1 runs, or maybe even stage 2 runs, you have some Illuvials that are going to be fighting fit, so you don't have to feel like you're spending the fuel, spending the money of sorts, and just kind of running into a brick wall. Or of course the additional alternative, the automated drone runs, costs fuel. It's definitely another option. I know personally that's not my favorite option, but I understand why it's there. But I'm personally very happy that this change is here, even though, like I'll talk about a little bit later when we're in game. This change, even though I wanted it, actually screws me big time. But I wanted this change, and I'll explain why in a little bit. In the meantime though, drone augments. So again, I think everything's basically the same as the testnet patch. Of course, Spike Up's going to add thorns to everybody. Glass Cannon, making your entire team do more damage, but take more damage. Health across the board as well. The Solid Start, basically giving your team, what, Granite? That's kind of crazy, of course. The Dodge chance for Windy Aura. Offensive boost, just 2% or higher, depending on the stage, across all offensive stats. Defensively, same idea. New batteries. This is one I'm going to be personally excited to try and play around with as a Scion player. Getting additional starting energy right off the rip. I want to see that. Scared of this one here. Critical strikes for the rogue players. I'm very curious to see how that one will end up turning out. And then Omega Overflow, just again for Scions, or it's the first thing that kind of goes into my mind, but you can use it elsewhere as well, is a big thing as well. But this was not in the testnet patch. So we have new regions with new effects coming on through here. So Abyssal Basin is going to have where you start with the 2 base imprints. Of course, that's the one that I actually don't like because I feel like it's kind of random, and especially going into Leviathan style ranked mode. If I have a team that's based around Aegis and say Scions, like I'm probably going to end up having, and I get a base imprint for Rogue or Fighter, or not Fighter, I'd be okay with Fighter, but like just say Rogue or something like that, that'd be frustrating because I have absolutely nothing built for that. The other one, they're going to change it up a little bit. It's just round 15, receive a composite crate. Brightland Steps makes a return. Start the match with 20 free shop rerolls. That sounds incredible. Brightland Steps, I feel like, is going to be so chaotic, because look at this next one here as well. Life insurance. Gain 5 credits every time you lose 10 health. So, when you lose streaking with life insurance might be actually kind of crazy to boost your economy super high. Crimson Waste, of course, Punishing Blows, just going to do additional 2 drone damage. That is fine. But we have a different one here for Crimson Waste here, the Radioactive Progression, where players are just going to start at level 3. That used to be the Sanctum Mesa buff, but it would also give you a little bit of credits as well. This one's just going to start you at level 3. We're going to see the return of Crystal Shores. Fusing Spree, gain 1 stackable reroll every time you fuse. So every time you level up or evolve one of your Illuvials, you get yourself a shop reroll. That is going to be extremely interesting, because maybe there's a world where you kind of combine things you really don't care about just to get yourself a couple free rerolls, especially in the early game when you're playing with tier 0s. Overflowing Refreshes, gain 1 stackable free shop reroll each round. So that used to be a Halcyon Sea thing, now moved over to Crystal Shores. Speaking of Halcyon Sea, we do have the Wave Rider. Credits from the wins and loss streaks are doubled. That one is going to stay. That's a normal one. Gain 2 additional credits each round. Okay, so they just kind of bumped it down from 3 to 2, but it's basically going to stay the same. We're talking about Sanctum Mesa. Well, here it is again. Stack Overflow. Players each have 1 extra alluvial slot on the field. That is awesome. I do remember this being essentially one, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but one of the favorited effects that I would try to push for all the time when I did play Teamfight Tactics. There was, I think, an augment or an item that you can give yourself before where you were able to then add 1 additional character onto the board. And instead of turning that into an item, they actually have this here as a region, so I like it. Weapon Mastery as well. Players can re-roll the weapon choice 1 more time, considering we already got it buffed up to 4. Now having it buffed up to 5, I mean, Sanctum Mesa Weapon Mastery is probably going to be one of the most consistent and tame battlefields on the arena, but that's okay, not everyone can be chaotic. Shard Bluff, legendary start. Players are going to start with a legendary augment. Okay, fair enough. Then same thing here. Component supply. Players start with 3 random augment components. So kind of trying to jumpstart your item economy without necessarily just shoving legendaries down your throat. I like it. And last but not least, Taiga Boreal. What do we have coming up here? Drone augments can be rerolled additional time. Going to stay the same as last time. And then Dark Hollow mods with drone augments this game are all stage 3. So they took out the one where I think it was drone augments can all be stage 2. Because yeah, that one wasn't very exciting. But getting the one where we have stage 3 all the time, I definitely do like that one. So these regions going to absolutely be fun to play around with. I look forward to it absolutely. As well as this feature, of course, we kind of touched on it in the testnet patch notes, but I'll quickly touch on it again. But the Augment Recycler, so when you get yourself a fully made augment, but you don't like which one it is, throw it on into the recycler. I believe it takes 1 turn to do so. Let's just read this over here. For those frustrating games where augments and offerings don't match your build, meet the Recycler, a reroller that swaps components or forge augments for 1 random one from the same category. Drag an unwanted item into the recycler from your inventory, then after the fight, so yeah, 1 fight, that's all it takes, a new item from the same category appears in the recycler for your next phase. So yeah, you trade not being able to use the augment for 1 turn for a shot at getting the one you wanted from the same family of augments. So in this instance here, you have the tank augments, the blue augments. You would be trading in using it for a chance at a different blue augment. Even it doesn't necessarily have to be a fully made augment either, even the pieces as well, the red, yellows, and blues, you can absolutely recycle those as well for a chance for a different one. So the tailoring update and weapon rerolls. So this, of course, was in the same thing from the testnet updates, but basically tailoring is a little bit better now with one of your 3 shots at getting your imprint or whatever it happens to be. It used to be one of them was completely random. Now there's one that's actually just tailored with the board itself. So specifically trying to find that augment that you're looking for is that much better if you're willing to put in the time to make all those moves. So I like this change. A little bit more power to the players. Weapon rerolls, of course, going from 2 to 4. That's going to stay the same from the testnet. And then there was some balance changes as well, with the big one, at least in my opinion, being towards the Eve line or the Geyser line, where they're trying to make this thing more of an off tank rather than just a caster. So you can kind of put it not directly in the front line, but kind of be the second Illuvial kind of hit in command, so to speak, or maybe take some of the smaller Illuvials. And it's going to be buffing that, and I believe Tsunami also got a massive buff in this patch, so... Fighter being nerfed ever so slightly, Empath's getting a slight buff at least early. Air is going to find itself a relatively decent nerf, at least at the later stages. Nature is going to be getting a buff as well, or it's missing health regeneration. Of course, 8 natures, you hardly ever see it. It barely ever works when you do see it, so I'm glad to see it getting buffed. Composite Invoker 2 was rather easy to get and pretty strong, so I understand the nerf there, even though that hurts my soul a little bit. Vanguard also going to be getting a nerf, specifically that 1% when you have, it would be the Ranger, Malura, and the Penguin. Going to see the nerf there. Predator is going to get a nerf across the board. Arcanite's going to get a buff towards Arcanite 4, which, let's be honest, as of right now, we hardly ever see. Probably not going to be a huge effect, except for maybe some of these Abyssal Basin matches. Colossus, we never really ever see, but they're going to get a nice little max health bonus there. Toxic is going to get a slight nerf here as well, based off of the max health explosion on Takedown. Magma is going to see the damage over time go up by about 10%, it looks like, at the later levels. And 10% early, 5% in the middle. Now, Tsunami. This is the one that I was looking for, of course, because we are going to get a pretty decent buff here. But the AoE damage, based off of energy cost, is going to go up rather significantly, especially later on. Or actually, no, it's the same across the board. 20% across the board. Energy refund also getting a nice buff there. Spore also getting a very nice buff, even though some people do believe that maybe they're already in a pretty decent spot. Will this push them over the edge? We'll have to see. We did, of course, have a bunch of different buffs and nerfs to weapons. I'll quickly, just kind of gloss over them, but basically the Boomerang is getting a slight nerf, Vinebound Cleaver getting smacked once again, Emberling Rod getting some buffs and some nerfs depending on the augments themselves. Aqua Blasters amplifiers are going to see a solid hit, specifically the Tidal Penetration one, the one where you're actually penetrating through the resistances and being able to blow up tanks. That is going to get a slight nerf. Give the tanks at least a little bit of a fighting chance. Sprout Guard, the Scion Shield, or the Earth Scion Shield, is going to get a buff across the board. Elderwood Staff with a little bit of a buff to one of its augments. Ember Buckler are going to see its stun duration on the Unrelenting Force augment going up. And the Flame Warden Staff is going to see a buff basically across the board, as well as on that Searing Echo damage over time, the dot style of playing the Flame Warden Staff. Suit Amplifier as well, Evasive Momentum, the attack speed and movement speed on dodge. I feel like nobody really uses this. I still feel like nobody is really truly going to be using this. Temporal Flare, every second Omega, bonus attack speed granted to allies, going up by 5%. Interesting to see where that one ends up going. Slight radius increase here for the Ironclad Blessing. How about the augments themselves? What actually stayed from the testnet? Let's see here. So the Arcane Omega Reactor, where you're getting Omega power over time, did stay. That is going to be a 1-point decrease from 4 to 3. The Siphon Impact Reactor, the bonus health and bonus Omega power that you get from it is going to go down. A little bit more focused on the stats that you're stealing from your opponent now. Disruptive Force Reactor, the attack speed on takedowns going down by 2%. Still probably going to be, maybe not a must pick, but a highly sought after augment still, in my opinion. The Clumsy buff is just so good, or the Clumsy debuff is so good. Restorating Impact Reactor, where you get health and resistances on takedown, 1 point and 1% nerf on both of those. And there was a couple changes here to some legendary augments, specifically the Omega power based one. So the Celestial Cycle going to have starting energy go down by 10, and the Arcane Conduit is going to have its energy gained on attack go down by 1. The one buff here, though, is to the Titan's Redoubt, where we're going to see a 5% bonus to its bonus health. So, an overall incredible patch in my opinion. This is going to be a controversial one for a lot of players, and at the same time though, it's an extremely exciting one.